Raise your hand.
Cooperation.
Cooperations, they cooperated well together, very good. What else? Safety conscious. That's certainly applicable to this video, right? But safety is a very good factor to have on your evaluation tool. That was mentioned yesterday. What else?
They worked well as a team.
Teamwork. Teamwork is a very good tool, a very good factor to use in your performance tool. What else?
Communication.
Communication. Communication, is that, yeah, that's pretty important.
They were focused.
They were focused.
Productive.
Productive.
Efficient.
And efficient. Very good. Very good. So we know what factors in general, I think we're all kind of on the same page as to what factors we're looking for. I want to show you the evaluation tool that we use at Uintah County. I have a few examples here and some do's and don'ts, but I want you to help me decide maybe what would be some good things, bad things about some of these evaluation tools, or not the tool itself, but some of the comments. So we've got the employee name, all this, stuff at the top, and then our factors, our job knowledge, attendance, judgment, decisions, meets, deadlines, teamwork, customer service, performance, and professionalism. Again, I don't want you to focus on our form because it's maybe not the best tool, but it's a tool. So, but what's maybe some things about this particular evaluation that good or bad? So this employee exceeds in all categories. And instead of doing the rating like Weber County, we do the acceptable and needs improvement instead of the 1 through 5 deal. So, yeah, so this person exceeds in all categories. What do you think about that? Have you ever gotten a performance evaluation back that looks somewhat like that? What do you do about it?
It's too general.
What does your county, what can you do about it, I guess, is the question. So, what should I have done in this scenario? If I receive, as an HR person, I see this in my office, what do I do?
Joe, can I ask a question? This might help. Are your folks trained at all to know what would qualify for needs improvement? I mean, if somebody's just going along doing their job, does that mean it's acceptable? What does it take to get needs improvement?
Very good question. So, yeah, so we do train our supervisors, and that's a very good point, and got to back up a little bit. But that's one thing, us as HR people, we need to make sure that our department heads and elected officials understand the reason behind the tool, why we do this. And I think that a lot of times is what is kind of our own worst enemy, really, is because we don't get it out enough to say, hey, you know what, this is how things should be done before this happens. Now, of course, hindsight's always 20/20, so I've got this department head, an elected official, okay, we talked about that a little bit yesterday, we have some concerns there, but so what would be the best thing that I could do when I receive this performance evaluation in my office? What should I do?
Take it back to the supervisor and have a discussion with them about it.
Oh my gosh, I gotta go talk to that department head about this. But yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do in HR. That's what we do. We have to have those critical conversations. So, gotta take this back and say, I find a lot of times, and I did this with this one, and a lot of times I find that it's not necessarily the content, what you say, but it's how you come across. It's how you approach it. And yeah, I know I've ticked a few people off because I like to do that sometimes. So yeah, so I would take this back to my department head and say, well, so okay, I understand this person is an excellent employee. I know her very well. She's been with the county 20 some odd years, as Brad was mentioning. She does a great job. Can we put a little detail in here? Can we put a little more it that you've noticed that she exceeds in teamwork? What does she do? You know, and so that's the best thing to do is to, and I'm glad Brad mentioned this too, is he has a little room for content. You want to be able to scribble in there what they actually do to get that good of a rating, whatever your rating is, whatever your tool is. You need to be able to have some room for them to make notes in there.
So Joe, as a department head, you want me to tell you why they exceed? Is that what I'm trying to hear you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, what is it about this person that makes her exceed in attendance? How do you exceed in attendance?
Saturday.
I don't know that there is an exceed in attendance. You know, so these are the things that, as Kristen was mentioning, these are the things that we need to train our supervisors and let them know. Hey, you know, this is what we expect. These are the factors we use. This is what we expect on this performance evaluation, and these are the things we want to see. So again, I'm going to throw the ball back in your court, and you're going to be the one that you really need to train your supervisors on how to perform these performance evaluations.
Can I jump in on one
Please
thing
do.
as well? On this, as you guys know, I'm counsel on this, and so I'm trained to kind of pick things apart. If I am on the other side and I'm defending the employee, say this thing goes south, you guys terminate somebody, and this goes south, and I've got this evaluation in front of me as an exhibit before a jury. Can you scroll down just a little bit?
Yep.
The first thing I see is where it says write explanations in instances where an employee needs work. Well, there's no explanations. So what do I then preach to the jury? There's obviously nothing that this employee needs work on, because it says right there in the instructions to write an explanation. And since nobody's put an explanation, doesn't that say that they don't need work on anything and that they were truly exemplary? That's the argument that will be made if that isn't filled out, because that's what the instruction says. So you can see how things can be twisted to, you know, something that isn't intended. Maybe this person isn't exceeding in all categories, or if somebody maybe is lazy and they don't want to fill it out. Well, if there's nothing that's bad that's written there, obviously that's because they're doing fantastic.
Right, so why are we terminating them?
So why are we
disciplining
terminating them? Right.
Yeah. We also have a section for goals down at the bottom, and it even says right there, SMART goals. You guys all know what that is. Continue to strive for accuracy. How's that measurable? That's very measurable, actually. But the continue part is not very measurable. But if this department head really wanted to measure that, could they? Absolutely. You can tell if a person's making a lot of mistakes, or even if they're still continuing to make a lot of mistakes. It takes time and effort. That's kind of challenging to do that to make it measurable. Continue to strive for excellent customer service and teamwork. Why are we saying that when we say that they're exceed in teamwork? You see where I'm going with this? So you need to look at it through when you receive these things back, and hopefully, you can get some training put together where you're talking with your employees about, or your supervisors about how to conduct these performance evaluations. Truly, my perspective is that our supervisors or our employees, they want to know when they're doing a good job. They want to know when they're doing bad, and they want to know what your expectations are. I think they yearn for that. That's a management concept that motivation concept that we hear from Douglas McGregor. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a motivational theorist, where he labels employee. He says that management labels employees as theory Y or theory X, and theory Y is that you have the philosophy that all your employees want to work. They consider work natural, like play or family or anything else. And then there's the theory X that supposes that employees don't want to work and they need to be prodded and pushed. But I think my perspective is the Y part, where most employees, most people, all of you in here are here for a reason. You know, you're not forced, anybody forced to be here? You're not afraid. Anyway, I think we all, as humans, want to learn and grow and get better and develop in that theory Y concept instead of the theory X. So the employees, they want to know where they can improve and what you expect of them. All right, let's look at another one. With every bad, you got to follow up with a couple good, right? So this one has a lot of writing in the big white spaces. I always tell my supervisors, fill the white box. And some of them are scared. You know, I don't want this to come back to bite me. Well, if it's good and if it's understandable and legible, is it going to bite them? If it reflects truly what the employee is, it's not going to come back to bite them. So let's just take the top one. Job knowledge, knows her duties and has knowledge of office functions. I think that's very good. Very good. Short explanation, and it's positive. And we all know this, that the positive goes, I said, you know, with every negative, you got to follow up with a couple positives. Have you ever heard of the, let's see, in the top world I can say this, but here I probably should not. The crap sandwich. You know, have you heard that one? The bread is the good and the meat is the bad. So you always gotta have good surrounding the bad that you give them. So that's the case in this one is, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but a lot of good content here, a lot of good discussion about this employee. Good attitude, is enjoyable to be around. Smart goal: scanning, working copies, and indexing, organized. Again, is it measurable? I think it's measurable, but it's not written measurable. Does that make sense? What's wrong with saying, going back and looking at the past month, and these don't have to be, even though they're an annual evaluation, they don't have to be annual goals. It can be a month goal, it can be a week goal. You can write a goal separate. It doesn't have to necessarily be on the evaluation, but you can go back and say, okay, we have this scanning project that we're in the middle of. 60 documents were scanned, and next month I need you to bump that up to 75 or 80, whatever you decide. You know, that we can measure that kind of stuff. That's pretty, actually I think that's pretty easy to measure. Just a matter of writing it on the tool or in your goal, wherever you're going to write the goal. Again, it's not a problem to put a short-term goal in here. You don't have to do an annual length goal on the annual evaluation. So that's a decent one, and then I've got another one here that's that I'm installing an update for.
Please wait a few minutes.
Joe, while you're waiting, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So with our process at Duchesne, we have for admin employees, anybody outside the sheriff's office, a 6-month probationary window. For the sheriff's office, it's a year, but they still evaluate at 6 months. And what we've always communicated in our staff meetings to managers is, if you have a new employee in particular, you should be looking at them monthly, checking their progress, making notes. Do you have something that you use kind of like for those short-term objectives that they're supposed to meet, or a tool that you work with your managers, or just training to say, hey, you don't have to wait 6 months, or you don't have to wait a year, and implement this process throughout?
You know, I don't. That's a good question. I don't really have a tool for that. I do, however, you know, I'm a big fan of supervisor notes. I know a lot of people don't like that because they can be used against you in the court of law, you know, and that kind of stuff. But, you know, typically the supervisor's notes are very handy in my mind, because you can document the good and the bad and the ugly and, you know, whatever happens without having to wait for this tool to come around. we do the same thing. We do the 6-month performance evaluation. We do a monthly. We want them to do a monthly one while they're in the probationary period, but they don't always do that, and it's really hard to track that. You know, you've got a million other things on your plate that you're dealing with. Again, I think a very good thing about training is you tell them ahead of time, up front, what you expect them to do. One of the things I tell them about is one of my biggest, I don't know about heroes, but Sam Walton was excellent at doing this, this concept of continuous performance appraisals. He had this tool. He had a tool similar to this where they do their performance appraisals. I worked at Walmart for a while, and they do this thing called managed by walking around. You ever heard of that? MBWA. So our offices, especially in county government, are typically small enough that the department heads should be able to rate and do performance appraisals continuously, you know, all the time. Check with your employees and talk with them. Don't just sit in your office and delegate stuff and have them do it, but actually go out there, work with them, see what they're doing, show them different ways to do things. And that's one of the best things that I learned from the Walmart philosophy, managed by walking around, is you're actually in the trenches with them, you're helping them out. I try to make it a point to go with one of my equipment operators or one of my truck drivers in my road department every month and go for a ride with them. Yeah, I only take a couple hours, but the department head, the previous road department head didn't really like that. He thought I was stepping on his turf. But the current road department head really likes that because I get back with him and talk with him about, you know, things that I'm seeing, good and bad, and then he has started to do the same thing. So now he goes out with all of his employees here and there just to kind of manage by walking around and being with the people. And I think that's very helpful for them to get that perspective instead of just waiting until the end of the year or till whenever the time frame is on that management tool that we have to use it. So.
Can I jump in though? One of the things, and those tools are great, especially the probationary tool is great, but I have to really emphasize consistency. That is probably the number one thing. If you are going to implement a probationary program, or if you're going to utilize these performance evaluations, you've got to be consistent, at least within the departments. That has to be consistent, because if they're not, if 1 year performance evaluations are done, or for one employee there is probationary evaluations done, but it's not done for everybody, that's where ultimately you can run into some big problems. If it's done for 3 years and then all of a sudden there's not, and I think that Brad was mentioning that they had that in their case. I've seen that a lot as well, and those gaps are where there are all these issues of, well, why wasn't it done? Was it positive? Was it negative? There was no feedback then. There wasn't the progressive discipline. They weren't given that ability to improve. So if you start off on those performance evaluations, they need to be continued. And I'm not saying, you know, if it's, you've got the roads department and you've got, you know, a completely different department and each one of them do it differently, that's fine. But within the department, it's got to be consistent. And if they start, they need to continue, and it needs to be consistent for each employee as well, because they will be scrutinized to the letter, I guarantee it. And the lack of not having them, it would also be scrutinized. So you guys have to communicate to your folks that, you know, if you're going to do it right. If not, don't do it at all. You know, there's sometimes that it's like, oh, I wish we didn't even have performance evaluations. None is better than those that are done inconsistently. Yeah.
A good tool for me is the HRIS system, because I'm having the problem of remembering when the probationary reviews were due and when the probationary. So if on their data pile, you just plug in those dates when you need to check in with our employee on these issues. It emails me, the supervisor, and the employee. So if I get busy, the employee will come and remind me.
Did you guys hear that in the back? So Natalie at the health department has a management tool, an HR tool that sends her reminders, and she just sets it up on the hire of an employee, and then it'll send you an email, or?
It emails me, the manager, and the employee, so I plug in their date of hire, their date, their probationary review is due, and then their end of probationary review.
So, yeah, you can use a Google Calendar, you can use pretty much anything if you
Or
if
any
you
trainings
have a
that they
tool or
use.
whatever, and set yourself up the time frame on when this employee needs the performance evaluations. And, depending on your tool, it can notify your supervisor, it can notify you. Very good. Very good to have that automated.
Can I say something? You spoke a little bit about brand new employees, and this is an idea I got from a different department head. But when I first became the recorder a couple years ago, I sat down with each of my employees and said, okay, here's a list of what I expect of you. And the new employees I've got since then, within a month of their hire date, I sit down with their job description and a list of expectations. So they know what my cell phone policy, they know all those little things, so that they don't get to either that mid-review or their end review and go, wait, I didn't know that, you don't allow us to text all day, some of that makes common sense, but I didn't know what the dress code policy, So I sit down with them within a month and say, these are my expectations. They know, I make them sign it, they get a copy goes in their file, and they know exactly what I expect of them. Then when we get to that, and then after about 3 months, so about halfway through, I'll just sit down with them, informal, hey, how are things going? Do you have any questions about what your job is, about the expectations, or, just to see how they feel. If they have any concerns, I'll make a note of those and just stick them in my file that I keep of them. And then when their performance evaluation comes up, we go over that again, and that way there's no surprises, there's nothing, and they kind of have a gauge right out of the gate to know exactly what their job is and what they're expected to do. And I've seen it, kudos to them.
Yeah, very good. So it's just like the training, we say that we need to train our supervisors up front before we get to that point where they're writing these core performance evaluations. Same thing with department heads, they need to go and talk with their employees about what they expect and how the best way is to do their job. Because people want to know that stuff. I guarantee you they want to know. They want to know what's expected of them. So we're going to throw some scenarios at you, and I think, Chad, you're going to kind of go through those.
Sure.
We were going to role play these, but I had a hard time. You told me I had to wear a skirt to be Susie. Oh, no, wait, it's Shelly. I just couldn't do that.
Okay, so this first scenario we have, Shelley Smith works in the treasurer's office since June of 2005. And I'm a newly elected treasurer as of January 25th, 15. And I have documented a few observations about Shelley's performance. Okay, so I've been in a couple months now. The county performs evaluations, every year as a cycle, and it's time for Shelley's annual review. And I have listed here some of my observations about Shelley. Okay, so Shelley is Kurt with two specific customers from two specific title companies. Okay, to the point where she left, one of those ladies left in tears the last time she visited the office. She's pleasant to everybody else. I don't know what she has against these two people, but she's also snapped several times at her coworkers. Most of them deal with her personal area, her desk, if some of her space has been violated. Shelley's productive and makes fewer mistakes on the things that she does than the other deputies. And since the 1st of January when I took over, she's actually taught some of her coworkers how to use some shortcuts to enter the data and things more efficiently in her office. Another thing I've noticed about Shelley is she's here 8 to 5, and she takes her lunch hour at noon, and that's just the way it has to be. She's not very flexible on the schedule. She doesn't like to switch, and she's made it very clear that because she's been here longer than anybody else, that's her schedule, and she's entitled to work the best schedule that she wants to. Okay? So, a little bit more about Shelley. So because the evaluation is coming up, I talked to Joe in Human Resources, and I got some of her performance reviews because I wanted to see what her performance reviews were in the past. And I found that there's two years that my predecessor didn't have. 2006 and 2009 were missing. So, and then also I noticed something written in the 2007 where it says Shelley is going to work on her attitude and working well with others. Okay, so everything else was rated satisfactory or better. On a scale of 1 to 5, my predecessor marked her with 4s or 5s, you know, because they're our exemplary employee. So, what are some of the issues that I'm going to face as a treasurer in my situation here? Yeah.
Well, I think some things need to be dealt with immediately rather than held on to until the appraisal period, kind of like you were saying, no surprises, like the rudeness to the title.
To the title companies?
Yeah, so some of that maybe needs to be dealt with earlier than just, you know, held on until the appraisal period.
Okay, so you're saying if there is an issue, we need to address it
And let
as soon as we
them know.
notice it. Okay, very good.
You know, that's a very good comment, because a lot of times, our supervisors don't want to have that critical conversation throughout the year. And, you know, nor do we. I think that's kind of human nature. But I think if you catch it up front, it's not a very good thing to pile on a bunch of stuff. You know, address one issue as it comes up instead of piling on a bunch of stuff, waiting a whatever period of time it is, 6 months, a year, whenever you need to do your formal appraisal. But if you address it right away, timeliness really does count.
Not only that, but I guarantee if you don't address it as it's ongoing, it's forgotten about. And it won't be addressed later on at the performance appraisal.
Yeah.
It just won't.
And the employee's going to say, well, why didn't you tell me 6 months ago or a year ago when you noticed it? Why did you wait this whole time? And it's only going to get worse. So it's a very good observation. What else did we observe from this?
Or they feel like they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
that makes it worse too, because everybody else in the office sees that that person's getting away with it, and you're not addressing it.
And if it gets so bad that you want to then maybe jump to a termination, then, well, where's the progressive discipline? This is the first time I've ever known about it. Well, it's been happening for years. Well, where's the documentation of it? You never told me.
Yep.
One thing for, you know, as a new department head, even though you're the recorder, you know, your management style is different than your predecessors. And so I think this employee is acting like she's in charge of you. So if you don't stop that immediately, it's going to continue, you know. We have that right now going on in a couple areas. And so with the lunchtime, you know, she needs to be flexible. And it's, you know, not that you're being hard-nosed or anything, but what under their job descriptions, you know, other duties as assigned, or, you know, you're the supervisor. So if you want her to take a different time, or have a meeting with the whole department to see what works best, but just because she's there the longest doesn't mean that she should have that sense of entitlement, because she's going to try and, you know, roll you if you don't let her.
Yeah. If
Does that
seniority
make
were
sense?
the case, then me as the newly elected official would have absolutely no seniority. And
And it's
imagine
kinda
an office
like-
like that. And that's, you're right, you would seriously have problems with.
It's like I've told our newly elected, you know, officials that are in your positions, you know, they're like a child. They're going to push you as a parent. You know, how far can they push you?
They want to see where their boundaries are before they.
So let's tackle this with Shelley. So with your part, get together and talk about the way you're going to tell Shelley so that she feels good about it, that she's not going to be the 8 to 5 or with noon lunch and has to be more flexible with the other employees in the office. How are you going to say that to Shelley as the supervisor?
And deal with the fact that she's rude.
Get with your part and come up with a good way to say that. Because we all know what needs to happen, but how?